for the third time, says consensus important to run the country. 19 killed as gunmen attack churches, synagogues and police posts in Russia's North Caucasus region of Dagestan. Attackers shot dead. The European Union targets Russia's LNG exports in a new round of sanctions. Restrictions to take effect after a 9-month transition period. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says intense fighting against Hamas in Gaza is coming to an end, but the war will continue. The 18th Lok Sabha held its first session on Monday. The lower chamber of India's legislature met for the first time after parliamentary election. The special session will see members take the oath and elect the speaker. Debyendu Mondal reports.
18th Lok Sabha began its first sitting on Monday. As per customs, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the media in the morning before the beginning of the first session.
सरकार चलाने के लिए बहुमत होता है, लेकिन देश चलाने के लिए सहमति बहुत जरूरी होती है। जो लोग भारत की लोकतांत्रिक परंपराओं पे निष्ठा रखते हैं, उनके लिए 25 जून न भूलने वाला दिवस है। कल 25 जून को भारत के लोकतंत्र में जो काला धब्बा लगा था, उसके 50 वर्ष हो रहे हैं।
On Monday morning, before the beginning of the first session of the new Lok Sabha, the President of India administered oath to the pro-term Speaker. The pro-term Speaker is a temporary position who presides over the proceedings of the Lok Sabha to administer oath to all the newly elected parliamentarians. The swearing-in ceremony of the parliamentarians began at around 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi was the first parliamentarian to be sworn in on Monday morning. This was followed by the oath-taking ceremony of all the cabinet ministers and the Council of Ministers of the government. On the first day, more than 260 parliamentarians were sworn into the Lok Sabha, or the lower house of the Indian Parliament.
And Debyendu Mondal now joins us for more. Debyendu, how did day one of the session pan out?
Well, Ramesh, the first day of the 18th Lok Sabha was, of course, this day marked, in fact, with the swearing-in ceremony of all the parliamentarians that have won in this the lately conducted general elections of 2024. What we saw today was, of course, the swearing-in ceremony of 260 plus MPs throughout the day that began at about 11 a.m. this morning. It also, today also was the day when the pro-term speaker was sworn in by the President of India, after which he administered oath to the rest of the parliamentarians who won. The Prime Minister was the first to be sworn in, after which it was the panel of the speakers or the pro-term speakers who will administer oath was sworn in, followed by the cabinet ministers and then his council of ministers, and then all the other member of parliament alphabetically according to the states, which began with Assam and will conclude with West Bengal. So of course, the first day was of course I was there in Parliament in the morning throughout, where we saw a lot of new member of parliaments coming in, they're registering themselves. So this is a formal process of the beginning of the 18th Lok Sabha, where all the new parliamentarians will come in, they will swear, they will be sworn in by the pro-term speaker. The registration of their IDs to enter into the parliament will be done by the parliamentary, by the Lok Sabha secretariat. So of course, it was a day filled with a lot of hustle and bustle in Parliament. We also saw a lot of family members of the parliamentarians had come in at the Parliament to witness their family member being sworn in to the 18th Lok Sabha. So of course, This will also be done tomorrow, wherein the rest of the member of parliaments will be sworn in by the pro tem speaker, and after which the swearing in ceremony of all the member of parliament will be concluded to the lower house. Back to you, Ramesh.
So that's what happened through the day, Debendra. But looking ahead, what's expected on Tuesday? Also, what can you tell us about the speaker's election?
Well, Ramesh, that's interesting. The speaker's election is something that that will draw a lot of political attention across the country because it is still not clear as to who the speaker of the 18th Lok Sabha would be. The names would, of course, come in from the single largest party, that is the BJP, which is also in the government. So what we have generally seen is that the speaker is generally from the largest ruling party, which is in this case the BJP. So of course we are expecting that a name would probably crop up tomorrow and would be suggested by the Prime Minister. But of course we'll have to wait and watch how it plays out tomorrow, because day after tomorrow is the day when the speaker would be elected by all the 543 elected members of parliament in the lower house, which is the Lok Sabha. And this will be followed by the inaugural address of the President of India to both the houses of Parliament, which is the lower and the upper house of Parliament, in a joint sitting. This marks the formal beginning of the 18th Lok Sabha, after which the President's speech will be put to debate in the Parliament, both in the upper as well as the lower house, as motion of thanks to the President's speech, where the floor leaders of both the houses will be presenting their shares, their views on the President's speech as part of the motion of thanks. So right. This session, which ends on the 3rd of July, is a special session which has been called by the government for the swearing in, for all the inaugural processes that is required in a parliamentary democracy. Right. This is a formal session that will be concluded on the 3rd of July, and after which we'll have the budget session that is likely, budget/monsoon session, that is likely to commence later next month.
Vivendu, thank you. Appreciate it. India's former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi imposed a nationwide emergency on the 25th of June 1975. DD India correspondent Nandita Dagar spoke to a veteran journalist and anti-emergency activist, Mr. K. Vikram Rao, who recounted how he spent 13 months in jail.
On 25th of June 1975, the then Indian Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, had imposed a national emergency where the powers of the Constitution were completely curbed. And during that time, there were journalists and several professionals, people who were agitating and were political prisoners. We are joined by Mr. K. Vikram Rao. He is a veteran journalist of more than 40 years of experience in the media. Why is it important that the young generation knows about it?
On 25th of June 1975, what happened in this country was a fascist regime. Even Italy and Germany did not face that, which we faced in India. It was brutal, inhuman, barbarian, the way journalists and human beings were treated by the then government. And I'm glad what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in Lok Sabha today, that who are opposing Constitution of India, who are accusing the Modi government of killing Constitution. These people, the very same people who had murdered Constitution without any remorse.
With camera person Rajesh Riki in New Delhi, this is Nandita Dagar for DD India.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman chaired a 6th pre-budget consultation in New Delhi on Monday. She met with representatives of trade unions and labour organizations to gather suggestions for the forthcoming general budget. The pre-budget consultation meeting was also attended by the Chief Economic Advisor and the secretaries of various departments. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that the introduction of goods and services tax resulted in significant savings for people. The GST was introduced in the year 2017. Taking to X, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "For us, reforms are a means to improve the lives of 140 crore Indians. After the introduction of GST, goods for household use have become much cheaper. This has resulted in significant savings for the poor and common man. We are committed to continuing this journey of reforms to transform people's lives, unquote. The World Health Organization and India's Ministry of Ayush organized a consultative meet on research topics in traditional Indian medicine. Now, Ayush is an acronym for Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha and Homeopathy. Several issues such as intellectual property right and standardization of alternate medicine therapies were discussed.
This is under the Ministry of Environment. And in that they are looking at what stage of the plant-based product or Ayurvedic product do we need to look at intellectual property rights and ownership. Is it at the level of protein? Is it at the level of DNA or RNA? At what level? And in this context, we need to follow some of the discussions which is also happening in the Ministry of Environment and the Convention on Biodiversity, because that is going to have a major impact on our research aspects over here in Ayurveda.
Capacity building at various levels is extremely important. And all the Ayush chairs now we have, they are bringing expertise from different disciplines. Already CCRAs has an array of institutions across India. There also capacity is present.
And moving on, a scandal over bets placed on the date of the UK election continues to dominate the campaign trail. There are reports that an investigation into betting by members of the Conservative Party is expanding, and the Conservatives have launched their own probe into the claims. DD India's Ollie Barrett reports from London.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says that his Conservative Party is carrying out its own investigation into the growing scandal around bets being placed on the date of the snap election. He insists that he doesn't know of any further Conservative Party candidates being investigated by the regulator, the Gambling Commission, at this stage, and the Prime Minister says he himself is not under investigation, but he's still facing major criticism from the other parties. The Labour leader Keir Starmer says if he were a leader of a party which had candidates facing allegations like this, that he would suspend them. The Liberal Democrats have called for the Prime Minister's ethics advisor to investigate, but also to look into whether any cabinet ministers may have placed any bets on the date of the election. And this is all making the final couple of weeks of the election campaign very, very difficult indeed for a Conservative Party already trailing by some distance in the polls. All of the polls still have the Conservatives around 20 points or more behind Labour. So the Labour Party, going into the final week and a bit of the campaign trail, are doing everything they can to try and encourage their voters out on July the 4th when election day gets here. They are trying to urge against complacency and any of their potential supporters feeling that it is a done deal that Labour will win the election.
And staying in Europe, France could see civil unrest and violence that is related to the elections, its Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said on Monday, as campaigning enters its last week before the first round of voting. According to a poll survey, France's far-right National Rally Party and its allies are seen leading the first round with 35.5% of the vote. The left-wing New Popular Front Alliance is in second place with 29.5% of the vote. President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance was seen in third place, winning 19.5% of votes. The election for France's lower house of parliament, conducted over the two rounds, will be on the 30th of June and the 7th of July. Meanwhile, New Caledonia's jailed pro-independence leader Christian Tien was extradited along with 6 others for inciting violent protests in the French Pacific territory once again. The protests began in May this year after a French reform vote allowing French residents of the territory voting rights. And still to come on DD India Newshour. Russia's President Vladimir Putin condoles the killing of 19 people in terror attacks in Dagestan. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says conflict will not end until Hamas is destroyed. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The EU Council has adopted the 14th round of sanctions against Russia. They're aimed at tackling the circumvention of existing measures and to further restrict profits from Russia's energy industry. The sanctions bar any EU facility to be involved in the transshipment of Russian liquefied natural gas to any third-party countries.
The European Union on Monday adopted a 14th package of sanctions on Russia that aims to close some circumvention loopholes. It hits Russia's gas exports for the first time. Western powers imposed sweeping sanctions on Moscow after the Russia-Ukraine conflict broke out in February 2022, which has been progressively ramped up since. The package will add 116 entities and individuals to the sanctions list, bringing the total to more than 2,200. The new restrictions on gas aim to reduce Russia's revenues from liquefied natural gas exports by banning transshipments of EU ports and a clause allowing Sweden and Finland to cancel some LNG contracts. The measures stop short of an EU ban on LNG imports, which have risen since the start of the conflict. The sanctions will take effect after a 9-month transition period. The package also prohibits new investments and services to complete LNG projects under construction in Russia. The EU will add 27 vessels to its list of sanctioned entities. It includes oil and liquefied natural gas tankers. The list also includes ships that have been transporting defense equipment for Russia. In a further move to hurt Moscow's ability to trade, the sanctions package bans EU banks outside Russia from using Moscow's financial messaging system, SFPS, its equivalent to the global payment system SWIFT. Western powers had banned Moscow from SWIFT in 2022. The EU also adopted sanctions against 6 people in Sudan over the war between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary rapid support forces that has engulfed the country. It includes officials from both Sudan's army and the paramilitary. Ahead of the talks, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said that he would put forward a proposal on how to avoid any member state blocking the use of proceeds from frozen Russian financial funds to support Ukraine.
We have these revenues coming from the frozen assets, and we have to look for a way in order to use them, avoiding any kind of blockage. We have a process in order to make this work quickly. The first tranche of money will come next week, next week in July, yes. The second will come some month later. This money cannot get stopped. It has to be used, and we have a legal procedure in order to avoid any kind of blockage.
The EU foreign ministers had an informal exchange of views with Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, via video conference. Bureau Report, DD India.
And William Denslow joins us from Brussels for more. William, how much will these sanctions hurt Russia?
Well, the hope from the European Union side is certainly that this will tighten the screw, will hit Moscow in the purse strings going forward as well. The 14th round of sanctions we have seen, and as we just heard, the first time that liquefied natural gas have been targeted. According to some analysts, this could impact Russia to the tune of millions rather than billions of dollars, but still an impactful move, the EU hopes, especially when taken in concert with the fact that over 100 individuals and entities also included in this sanctions package. Also the fact for the first time that some Russian vessels carrying things like grain, carrying things like military equipment also included. Another addition in this 14th round of sanctions is a tightening of the import of Russian diamonds as well, that was included in a previous sanctions raft. So the EU hope that this will send another strong message, not just to Moscow, but those that are enabling its war in Ukraine. And on the flip side, as well as hurting Russia financially, efforts are ongoing to support Kiev and provide it with more military assistance going forward.
Now, that said, William, why did the meeting stop short of an EU-wide ban on imports of Russian LNG?
Well, it's very difficult, and as we heard as well, there have been an increase in the import of Russian gas since the start of the full escalation a couple of years ago, and decoupling some European nations from Russian energy, very difficult indeed, and we still see some Central European nations somewhat reliant on gas coming from Russia. So for EU members to get any kind of sanctions packages over the line, a degree of concessions have to be made. Some nations are more vulnerable than others when it comes to where they get their energy mix from and how reliant indeed they are from Russia. So it's a difficult balancing act, considering the fact we've just had elections here in Europe, and a huge issue in the minds of voters across the European Union has been the cost of living, namely the cost of energy going forward. So any kind of seismic changes to energy supplies going forward could have a huge impact in the minds of voters, in the minds of the public across the EU. So certainly a difficult tightrope for EU leaders to navigate.
William, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And shifting focus to West Asia now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that while a phase of intense fighting against Hamas in the Gaza Strip was coming to an end, the conflict would not end until Hamas was destroyed. Now, this new phase would allow a shift in focus to the simmering conflict on the country's northern border with Lebanon.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that while the phase of intense fighting against Hamas in the Gaza Strip was coming to an end, the conflict would not end till Hamas's rule in the Palestinian enclave ends. He also reiterated his rejection to the idea that the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority run Gaza in place of Hamas.
After the intense phase is finished, we will have the possibility to move part of the forces north, and we will do this first and foremost for defensive purpose, and secondly to bring our evacuated residents home. If we can, we will do this diplomatically. If we not, we will do it in another way. We will bring all the residents home, at the residents of the north as well as the residents of the south.
Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continue to strike Al-Shati refugee camp in Gaza City, resulting in the destruction of at least 5 residential buildings and claiming the lives of at least 2 people. Civil defense teams are currently working actively to find survivors and rescue victims trapped under the debris following the intense bombing. According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, a global partnership that assesses food insecurity, new data reveals that approximately 166 million people worldwide require immediate intervention to address hunger. This includes a significant portion of Gaza Strip residents experiencing severe malnutrition. Bureau Report, DD, India.
And Sarah Coates now joins us from Tel Aviv. Sarah, Netanyahu says that the fighting in Gaza is winding down. So does that mean that the theater of conflict is shifting or shifted already to Israel's border with Lebanon?
Hello there, Ramesh. Well, this conflict on the border with Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah is becoming very, very dangerous. Cross-border fire on a daily basis. It was only 24 hours ago that there was an attack in one of these very northern communities in Israel, which killed at least one person, injured many more. And this is really one of the reasons why the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under so much pressure to restore that security situation in the north, given that some 60,000 Israelis remain internally displaced. Now, this, of course, is also causing a lot of international concern, and this is one of the reasons why Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is here in the region, her sixth wartime visit. She's holding high-level meetings with senior Israelis today. She'll also be in Lebanon, and one of the reasons she's here is to really try and calm tensions on that border. Now, we heard from Netanyahu, you mentioned it there last night, saying that this fighting is looking like it's wrapping up in Rafah and will potentially move to the north. We also heard from the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. He delivered a speech saying that the group would strike right across Israel if indeed this gets any further heated in the north. So this, of course, is very, very worrying.
Now, we've spoken about the Hezbollah and Lebanon, Sarah. Let's talk a bit now, if you will, about Hamas and Gaza. How many hostages are in Hamas's captivity? And how does Netanyahu plan to cope with protests demanding their safe return?
Well, the tally that Israeli authorities are using right now says that there are some 116 hostages still being held in the Gaza Strip, although it remains unclear, Ramesh, as to just how many of these people are still alive, with US intelligence reports citing senior officials as saying there may be as little as 50 people left alive in this captivity in the Strip. So certainly these are increased protests happening right around the country as demonstrators, loved ones, call on Netanyahu to do a deal now with Hamas to get these captives out of Gaza. But we do need to remember what we've been hearing from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu time and time again. He's basically been saying that military pressure alone will get these people out of the Strip. But this, of course, is causing a lot of anguish, a lot of grief, a lot of frustration among the loved ones of these hostages, who are very, very worried that this military action that has been ongoing now for months in Gaza could actually kill these hostages rather than their intended target, which is Hamas. So certainly very, very worrying, and we have been seeing these protests step up basically on a near daily basis, people demanding Netanyahu do a deal and do it now.
Sarah, thank you. Sarah Coates there in Tel Aviv. Moving on, gunmen opened fire on places of worship in two cities of Russia's southernmost Dagestan province on Sunday, killing at least 15 police officers and 4 civilians, including a priest. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attacks. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has expressed his deepest condolences to the families. Aman Kumar Himanshu has more.
In a deadly terror strike, unknown gunmen stormed a synagogue and a church in Russia's Dagestan region on Sunday, leaving 20 dead with several others injured. Gunmen also set fire an icon at the church and killed 66-year-old priest. Security forces launched an operation and killed 5 attackers. 3 days of mourning have been declared in Dagestan. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his deepest condolences to the family of the victims of the Dagestan attacks.
President Vladimir Putin expresses deepest condolences to all of those who lost their relatives both in Crimea in missile attack and to relatives and close ones of those who died in Dagestan.
Earlier, Governor of Dagestan visited the church and house and called it a terror attack. Subsequent operational search and investigative measures will be carried out until all participants in these sleeper cells are identified. And of course, they had been preparing, including from abroad. I would like to ask all of you, dear Dagestanis, dear guests of the Republic, to remain calm. The situation is now under the control of the government authorities and law enforcement agencies. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attacks, which come 3 months after ISIS carried out an assault at the Crocus City Hall in Moscow that claimed more than 140 lives. Russian Anti-Terrorist Committee and Investigative Committee is investigating the recent attack in Dagestan. Russia's investigative committee said 15 policemen and 4 civilians were killed. In another development, Russia has blamed the United States and vowed consequences for a Ukrainian missile strike on Sevastopol in Crimea on Sunday. In the missile attack, 4 people were killed, including 2 children, and several injured. Russia's defense ministry said the missiles used by Ukraine were US-supplied ATACMS missiles. Kremlin spokesperson called the strike barbaric and accused the US of killing Russian children.
We witnessed an absolutely barbaric missile attack in Crimea. We understand perfectly well who is behind this. The president last week repeatedly told about who is guiding towards target these technically complex missiles. It is not the Ukrainians who ensured these launches and so on. Everything is perfectly clear here. You, as representatives of media, need to ask my colleagues in Europe and especially in Washington, press secretaries, why their government are killing Russian children.
Meanwhile, in ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, a Russian missile attack on the southern Ukrainian city of Odessa struck a storage facility and wounded at least 3 people on Monday. The attack damaged a storage facility where some 50 people were working. The war in Ukraine has triggered the biggest confrontation between Russia and the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Kremlin spokesman said on Monday that Russia, the world's biggest nuclear power, has started updating its nuclear doctrine.
And still to come on DD India Newshour, a discussion on EU sanctions against Russia, gas, and its impact, if any, on India and the world at large. And India launches a campaign to showcase the country's success in science and technology.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. First session of the 18th Lok Sabha begins. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes oath as Member of Parliament for the 3rd time, says consensus important to run the country. 19 killed as gunmen attack churches, synagogues and police posts in Russia's North Caucasus region of Dagestan. Attackers shot dead. The European Union targets Russia's LNG exports in a new round of sanctions, restrictions to take effect after a 9-month transition period. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says intense fighting against Hamas in Gaza is coming to an end, but the war will continue. All right, going back to the top story that we are tracking here on DD India Newshour, the European Union has adopted a 14th round of sanctions against Russia. Dr. Mohan Kumar joins us from the New Delhi suburb of Greater Noida. Dr. Kumar is a former Indian ambassador to France and Bahrain. Ambassador Kumar, welcome to DD India Newshour. Now, straight off the bat, Ambassador Kumar, will the latest EU sanctions on Russian gas affect India?
There is the issue of primary sanctions and then there is the issue of secondary sanctions. So if there are Indian companies involved indirectly, then I think it will affect India as well. But I don't expect it to affect us in a very big way because already Indian companies have started taking precautions in anticipation of what the US and the EU will do. So I don't expect Indian companies to be dramatically affected, But yes, there will be some changes. As it is, India's gas imports have risen from Qatar, from the United States, and from a number of other sources. So gradually, I think our companies are taking precautions and making adjustments to the international regime.
Now, that said, Ambassador Kumar, they say there is opportunity in a crisis. Will Russia increasingly turn towards India to shore up its energy exports?
I think Russia has already is selling a lot of oil to us. It's in the area of gas, I think that we are not too dependent on Russia. We import from a variety of other sources. So if you're asking me about gas, I do not believe India will now suddenly try and increase gas imports from Russia. I don't believe we will do that. But we will continue to import oil. That is, I think, much more important for the Indian economy.
Right.
And we will try and do that as we have done in the past.
And talking about oil and gas, Ambassador Kumar, how would you describe the status of India's energy ties with Russia? What does India import from Russia, and is it continuing apace in spite of tensions between Russia and the West?
So what, Ramesh, your audience should understand is that we are now making purchases of petroleum products on the international market. So it's not as if we have predetermined in our minds that we will buy from one source or the other. It's completely an issue of price. The reason why we started buying oil in large quantities from Russia was because the Russian oil was cheap, frankly. And that makes a big difference for the Indian economy, since we have a large number of people who suffer from energy poverty, as I say. And as our External Affairs Minister has said, this is not a bad thing, because if India had not bought oil from Russia, then there was every chance that the price of oil would have shot through the roof. And that is, I don't think, good news even for the United States and Joe Biden in an election year. The price of gas at the pump in the United States is a very significant factor which will make a difference to election outcomes in the US. It traditionally has. So I don't believe that what we have done is against the interest of a large number of countries. It certainly has been in the interest of India. I would only put it to you that we will buy oil from wherever it is cheap. What we need for the Indian economy as we seek to take off and as we seek to achieve growth rates of 8% and above is inexpensive oil. As you and your audience know, we are heavily dependent on imported oil, and therefore I don't think we will be happy with very high prices. As long as prices hover around $80 to $85 Brent crude, I think we are good. So our objective is to source our energy supplies from the cheapest source possible without geopolitical considerations. I don't think there is too much of geopolitical considerations there. It's pure and simple economics.
Ambassador Kumar, having looked at it from an Indian perspective, if I were to ask you to approach it from a Russian perspective, just for the sake of argument, you think the sanctions will hurt Russia?
So far, Ramesh, the answer has to be in the negative. Everybody expected the kind of sanctions adopted by the West to completely sink the Russian economy. That has not happened. I agree that the Russian economy has taken a hit, but I don't think it has had the desired effect. And that is because there are other importers which have come to Russia's rescue. China imports huge quantities, much bigger quantities than India. India, of course, buys oil from Russia, and there are several other countries which continue to do that. So my answer to your question is there will be some impact on the Russian economy, but not enough to sink it.
Fair enough. Ambassador Kumar, if I were to ask you to take a step back, like zoom out and look at the Eurasian region as a whole. Now, India is operating the Chabahar port in Iran. It is said to be integral to the international north-south transport corridor that links India to Russia and beyond. Now, will greater connectivity lead to greater two-way trade between India and Russia?
Yes, I think there is a good chance that that happens. But I think, Ramesh, the real game changer is, I think, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, frankly. Those are the kind of corridors that will lead to a paradigm shift in our imports and exports, not things like the North-South corridor and the Chabahar, which I think have been talked about for a long time. But we know there are some important issues that block the full implementation of these projects. What I would say is that if something like the IMEC, as they call it, IMEC, takes off, that I think will be a real game changer for India.
And finally, Ambassador Kumar, how do you look at how India-Russia ties will shape up in Prime Minister Modi's third term in government? Will India stay the course?
I personally think, and I've written somewhere as well, that we have treated Russia very fairly. This is my broad assessment. We will continue to treat Russia fairly. We have a legacy relationship with Russia, and we have tried to resist a lot of pressure from the West and have tried to do business with Russia. But if you ask me in the long term, I really think there is no alternative for India except to diversify our supplies from Russia, whether it is defense or energy. I think the Russians know this, Indians know this, I think the Western countries know this as well. But these have reasons to do with Russia's own requirements, the own internal dynamic of Russia, the war that Russia is prosecuting vis-a-vis Ukraine. So it's not as if India has woken up one day and decided we will reduce our dependence on Russia. It's just the practical assessment based on the contemporary realities that is making India diversify its defense and energy supplies with the rest of the world.
Ambassador Kumar, pleasure as always to talk to you. Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. All right, now take a look at what else is making news in India. To manage overall food security and prevent hoarding, Indian government has imposed stock limits on wheat across the country till 31st of March 2025. The limits will be applicable to traders, wholesalers and retailers. The limit of wheat will be 3,000 metric tons for wholesalers. For retailers, it will be 10 metric tons for each of the retail outlets. India's Health Minister J.P. Nadda launched a national Stop Diarrhea campaign in the presence of Ministers of State Anupriya Patel and Jadhav Pratap Rao Ganapath Rao. The campaign aims to attain zero child deaths because of childhood diarrhea. It involves a 2-month-long drive with pre-positioning of 2 ORS packets and zinc as a co-packaging to under 5 children. India's Jal Shakti Minister C.R. Patil and Minister of State Rai Bhushan Chaudhary inaugurated a workshop titled Catch the Rain 2024. Speaking on the occasion, the minister said that this year's campaign has been named Nari Shakti Se Jal Shakti, which means from woman power to water power in Hindi. India's Minister of State for Science and Technology, Jitendra Singh, launched 1 week, 1 theme campaign showcasing recent success stories of India in different streams of science and technology. The minister said that this initiative under the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research aims to make innovation inclusive for all. And still to come on DD India Newshour. Fire at a lithium battery factory near South Korea's capital Seoul kills at least 16 people. And we tell you all about the International Day of Women in Diplomacy, which is celebrated on 24th June. That's coming up after a short break. Don't go anywhere.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
we don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Iran's presidential candidate Masoud Pezeshkian campaigned in Tehran, pledging to break the dam of Western sanctions on Iran and ruin those who benefit from them. Iran is due to conduct snap elections on the 28th of June after the death of President Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash. Pezeshkian, a reformist lawmaker, is running against 5 other candidates.
We must ruin those who benefit from sanctions, those who benefit thousands of billions from these sanctions, and nobody knows. We will stand against them.
The Philippines has accused China of using illegal force to deliberately disrupt a resupply mission in the South China Sea. Its defense chief said that last week's maritime incident, which injured a sailor, was neither a misunderstanding nor an accident. Meanwhile, reacting to it, China's foreign ministry on Monday urged the Philippines to stop its infringements and provocations amid the two countries' ongoing disputed waters in the South China Sea. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that China and the Philippines should work together to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea.
As for the incident of the Philippine ship illegally intruding into the waters adjacent to Renai Jiao, as you mentioned, the Chinese side has briefed you on the situation and clarified its position. Renai Jiao is a part of China's Nansha Islands and it is China's territory. The Philippine side should stop its infringements and provocations, return to the right track of properly handling maritime disputes through negotiation and consultation as soon as possible, and work with China to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea.
And in more news from the Indo-Pacific region, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te put out a statement calling China an autocracy as real evil after China threatened to impose the death penalty to die-hard Taiwan independence separatists. He said that China has no right to sanction Taiwan's people.
I also want to call on China to face up to the existence of the Republic of China and have exchanges and dialogue with Taiwan's democratically elected legitimate government. This is the only correct way to increase the welfare of people on both sides of the strait. If this is not done, relations between Taiwan and China will only become more and more estranged.
At least 16 people have died in a fire accident in South Korea. The devastating fire broke out at a lithium battery factory near Seoul, causing explosions at the storage unit on Monday morning local time. 67 workers were present at the factory at the time of the incident. Search and rescue efforts were underway and the fire was reported to be almost under control. Meanwhile, South Korea's Interior Minister Lee Sang-min assured full support to the victims of the incident. Dynamic changes in weather patterns have gained frequency. They point to an alarming situation across the world because of the ill effects of climate change. DD India's Antara Sinha has more.
Extreme weather events have upended normal life in vast swathes across the globe. Excessive heat has millions under warnings in the US and Europe, while torrential rainfall has inundated large parts in China and Europe. From the US East Coast to the West Coast, heat wave has caused people to resort to water fountains for respite. And in Europe, the heat wave is breaking all records. Sicilians were seen grabbing their semi-frozen granita, fanning their heat wave-stricken sunburnt bodies as they tackled the worst heat ever. While Romanians have had various code reds issued over the past days and have been advised to avoid outdoor activities. Summer heat has returned to parts of Spain, prompting a heat alert for the south where temperatures reached 39 degrees Celsius. Adding to the challenges, in California, a swift-moving wildfire that began mid-June took a wild turn overnight, affecting over 12,000 acres of land, prompting immediate evacuations. Coming to Asia, China issued a red alert seeing low temperatures, excessive rainfall and major sandstorms gripping its various regions. While in the southwestern regions, landslides triggered by torrential rains have prompted rescue and evacuations. As parts of US reel under heat, there is a stark contrast in its midwestern state of Iowa, where over 1 million are under flood warnings, with many townships inundated. In Switzerland as well, flash floods clubbed with landslides have affected daily life, causing deaths. Down in East African country Somalia, devastating flash floods transformed streets into waterways. The sudden deluge, residents say, has caused significant damage to properties and infrastructure. India's north, west and parts of south have suffered heat wave, and northeastern state of Assam has been reeling under floods as rivers have swelled up due to incessant rains. Antara Sinha for DD India.
In India's western state of Maharashtra, Mumbai and its adjoining areas are witnessing intermittent heavy rainfall. The regional weather agency has issued alerts for various parts of the state. It cautioned fisherfolk not to venture along and off the coastal area. The monsoon in Mumbai has got momentum in the last few days. Heavy rainfall and thunderstorm alerts have been issued for several areas of Maharashtra, including Thane, Palghar and Raigad. A yellow alert has been extended to other areas of Maharashtra such as Nashik, Vidarbha and Marathwada. The rain is providing much needed relief from the high temperature experience in recent weeks following a series of heat waves over the past few months. Meanwhile, air quality index has also been improved and now it falls in the good category. Women bring immense benefits to diplomacy. Their leadership style, expertise and priority broaden the scope of issues under consideration as well as the quality of outcomes. 24th June is celebrated as the International Day of Women in Diplomacy since 2022. An initiative by the United Nations General Assembly, it aims to make women's leadership more visible, acknowledge the achievements of women in the diplomatic sphere, and highlight the journey still required to achieve full and equal participation of women in all areas of decision-making and political life. And now to all the news from the world of sport. The two semi-finalists from Group 2 of the Super 8s were confirmed on Monday. South Africa and England have taken the first and second spots. Undefeated in the tournament so far, South Africa beat the West Indies by 3 wickets in a thrilling rain-curtailed match in Antigua. Batting first, West Indies put 135 runs on the board for the loss of 8 wickets. Roston Chase scored 52 runs while Kyle Mayers chipped in with 35. Chasing a revised target of 123 in 17 overs, South Africa lost its openers early but got back on track with Heinrich Klaasen's 21-run cameo of just 9 balls. But West Indies kept on scalping wickets and made it a thrilling encounter. In the end, the Proteas chased down the target with 5 balls to spare and 3 wickets in hand. To football now, striker Nicholas Fulkrug's powerful header came off the bench to grab an equaliser against Switzerland on Sunday that sends Germany through to the last 16 of Euro 2024. Swiss forward Dan Ndoye had threatened to spoil the party with a first half opener, but Germany is now on a 7-game unbeaten run, stretching back to November, and kept plugging away until the equaliser eventually came through Füllkrug. It denied the Swiss what would have been a second win over Germany in 22 competitive matches dating back to 1959, but its passage through to the last 16 is also secure. Germany tops the pool with 7 points from its 3 games, 2 ahead of Switzerland, while Hungary must wait to see if it will advance as one of the best third-place teams following a 1-0 win over eliminated Scotland. With wounds to dress and points to prove, 2 powerhouses, Italy and Croatia, face each other in Leipzig on Monday, knowing that their Euro 24 survival is on the line in the decisive Group B match. Italy is chastening 1-0 defeat by a dominant Spain on Thursday, and Croatia's 2-2 draw with Albania after conceding a stoppage time equaliser left both teams anxiously glancing at the table heading into their last game. Italy, second with 3 points after its opening win over Albania, will be through to the last 16 as runners-up if it avoids defeat. It will be unable to progress if it loses, and Albania beats group winner Spain in the other Group B decider. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India Newshour. You can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen now to download it. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. All of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Newshour.